Okay, let's dive right in. Have you ever really stopped to think about how a single plate of food can tell a story? I mean, a story that goes way beyond just the ingredients. We're talking trade routes, ancient kingdoms, colonial powers, and just incredible resilience. Well, in the Philippines, every single dish is exactly that. It's like a living archive, a delicious history lesson of a whole nation's journey.
And this quote from Chef Budgie Montoya, wow, it really gets to the heart of it all. See, Filipino food isn't just about survival. It's about adaptation, it's about fusion, and it's this powerful act of reclaiming an identity. It's a story told through fire, fermentation, and of course, a whole lot of flavor.
So, to really understand this story, we have to go way back. I mean, before the Spanish galleons ever even dreamed of crossing the Pacific. We're talking about a time of independent kingdoms and vast maritime states, a culture that was shaped profoundly by its own incredible environment.
And this geography is absolutely key. Think about it. Over 7,000 islands. That's naturally going to lead to some incredibly diverse local cultures, right? You're divided by mountains and water, but here's the twist. The sea also connects everything. It created this vibrant network for trade and exchange, and this was all happening long before any colonizers showed up on the scene.
This right here, this shows the pure ingenuity of early Filipino cooking. It's a palaiok. Now, you might look at it and just see a clay pot, but no. This was technology. It was designed for slow cooking, for gently pulling every last bit of flavor from local ingredients. The focus wasn't on fancy, complex sauces. It was all about honoring what the land and the sea gave you. And you can see here how these influences just started building up over centuries. The Philippines was a total crossroads. You had Indo-Malay migration laying the foundation, and then came the Chinese traders. And listen, it wasn't always simple, friendly bartering. That little incident in the 14th century where a chieftain took merchants hostage to get a fair deal, that tells you everything. It shows that Filipinos were savvy, powerful players in these exchanges, not just passively waiting for things to happen to them.
And then, everything changes. The arrival of the Spanish brings the cross, the sword, and a completely new pantry. At the very same time, Chinese influence is getting even stronger. It's the perfect storm for a culinary revolution that would define the Filipino plate forever.
This was an absolute game changer. For 250 years, the Manila Galleon trade basically turned the Philippines into a global hub. I mean, it connected Asia to the Americas and to Europe. All of a sudden, ingredients you'd never seen before, chayote, avocado, papaya, they're all arriving from Mexico. And Filipino cuisine just started soaking up all these new flavors like a sponge.
And the tamale is the perfect example of this incredible exchange. So, the Spanish bring the idea of the tamale over from Mexico, but there's a problem. Corn isn't really a big thing in the Philippines. So what do? Well, you adapt. Filipinos swapped out the corn masa for ground rice, they added the richness of coconut milk, and they used what was everywhere, banana leaves. And just like that, it became something totally new, something entirely Filipino.
Okay, let's talk about adobo. It's arguably the most famous Filipino dish, and for good reason. Its DNA literally tells the entire history of the nation. So, step 1, the base. That's meat preserved in vinegar and salt, a purely indigenous technique. Then, step 2, Chinese traders introduced soy sauce, which adds this whole new layer of salty, umami depth. And finally, step 3, the Spanish arrived with their bay leaves and black peppercorns. 3 cultures, 1 pot. I mean, if that's not the story of the Philippines, I don't know what is.
But the story doesn't end with Spain, not by a long shot. The 20th century brings a new colonial power, the United States. And with them come canned goods, a new focus on convenience, and the immense pressures of World War II. And that pressure? Well, it sparked some of the most amazing innovations in Filipino history.
And speaking of innovators, we absolutely have to talk about this woman, Maria Orosa. What a hero. She was a food chemist trained in the United States who came back to the Philippines with this incredibly powerful mission. She was going to use science to help her people achieve food sovereignty.
I mean, just look at this list of her innovations.
Banana ketchup?
That wasn't some cute novelty. It was a brilliant, practical solution to a wartime tomato shortage. Soyalac and Dirac? Those were designed to fight deadly malnutrition. She even invented an oven out of a traditional clay pot so people could bake without electricity. Her entire goal was to free Filipinos from having to rely on expensive and frankly often low-quality imported goods.
And her work went from science to straight-up resistance. During the Japanese occupation, she became a war hero.
She used her food science background to create these nutrient-dense rations that she and her team then smuggled into prisoner of war camps, saving countless lives. Tragically, she was killed during the American liberation of Manila, a true martyr for her country.
So, of course, a country with thousands of islands isn't going to have just one single cuisine, right? That would be impossible. Geography is everything here. The food you'll find in the northern mountains is going to be completely different from what's cooking in the coastal south.
So let's break it down by the three main island groups you can see here. You've got Luzon, the Visayas, and Mindanao. Each one has its own completely distinct culinary personality, shaped by its own unique history and the ingredients you can find right there. And this chart really spells out that diversity. So, up in Luzon, where Manila is, you'll find those famous sour and savory stews like sinigang, which often gets its kick from tamarind. Head down to the central Visayas Islands, and it's all about celebrating the sea. We're talking fresh seafood, often just simply stewed in vinegar. And then you go further south to Mindanao, and you can really feel the influence of nearby Malaysia and Indonesia. Rich spices, lots of coconut milk, and these incredible techniques like using burnt coconut for a smoky flavor.
Okay, so all of that brings us to the present day. After centuries of all this fusion and adaptation, Filipino food is, well, it's having a major global moment. But what's really interesting is that this success has sparked this fascinating, sometimes heated, conversation within the culture about what it even means to be authentic.
And a huge part of this conversation is being driven by young people. Get this. Over 40% of professional kitchens in the Philippines are now led by chefs under the age of 38. That's a huge number. You've got a whole new generation bringing in fresh ideas, international training, and this really powerful desire to redefine their own culinary heritage.
And here's another powerful thought from Budgie Montoya that just captures this central tension perfectly. He says, food has to evolve. Otherwise, it just becomes a museum piece. Preserved, but not really living anymore. It's the big question, right? How do you innovate and push forward without losing the soul of what your ancestors cooked? How do you honor tradition without getting trapped by it?
This really is the question at the heart of the modern Filipino food scene. Think about a dish like caldereta, a beloved goat stew. Its roots, they trace right back to Spain, but today, it's fiercely defended as a Filipino classic. So, at what point does a dish become ours? If we get too hung up on this idea of authenticity, does that mean we have to give up the very dishes that we now consider our own? It's a tough one.
But what is undeniable is that all this new energy is leading to some incredible global acclaim. We're seeing Filipino chefs earning Michelin stars and James Beard awards, things that were, frankly, almost unthinkable just a generation ago. The world is finally paying attention.
So when you step back and look at the whole journey, from that ancient clay pile oak all the way to a modern tasting menu, the story of Filipino food is really one of incredible creativity. It's about a culture that has faced colonization and hardship over and over again, and has always responded not by erasing the past, but by absorbing it, transforming it, and creating something uniquely and defiantly its own.
And this culinary journey is far from over. Not even close. It's a living, breathing story that's still being written in kitchens, both in the Philippines and all around the globe. So as it keeps evolving, you have to wonder, what new stories is Filipino food going to tell the world next?